you back to a truth I've preached from stadiums to street corners. God made us. He invented us like a man invents an engine. Picture it with me. A car is built from the ground up. Every bolt, every gear, every spark plug crafted to run on gasoline. You can't pour in orange juice, maple syrup, or ditch water and expect that engine to roar down the highway. It'll choke, sputter, maybe blow up in your face. That's not what it's made for. That's you and me, folks. God Almighty designed us, our spirit, our soul, to run on Him and Him alone. He's the fuel we're meant to burn, the bread we're meant to live on. There's no swapping Him out for something else. No shortcuts, no substitutes. I've told millions over the years that God has given us two hands, one to receive with and the other to give with, but we can't find peace until we rest them both in Him. You can chase happiness in 1,000 directions, money piling up in the bank, fame flashing your name in lights, pleasure calling from every corner, but without Him, it's like driving a pickup truck on fumes. It's not going to get you anywhere. Now, let's get down to brass tacks. Life's no picnic sometimes, and I've seen it up close. Maybe you're sitting there tonight with a stack of bills you can't pay, staring at an envelope stamped to past due, wondering how you'll scrape by till Friday. Or you're working yourself ragged, punching the clock at dawn, dragging home after dusk, while your boss heaps more on your plate, barking orders like a drill sergeant. Maybe it's your family, your little ones throwing tantrums over screen time, screaming bloody murder because you said a no to another hour of cartoons, or your teenager has shut you out cold, door slammed, earbuds in, a wall between you thicker than concrete. Worse yet, maybe your heart's breaking wide open. Your marriage is teetering on the edge, conversations cut short by silence or sharp words. Your best friend walked away when you needed him most, leaving you high and dry. Or you're grieving a loss, a parent, a child, a dream that's carved a hole in your chest nothing seems to fill. You're praying, pleading, crying out in the middle of the night, "Oh Lord, where are you? Why is it so quiet?" And it feels like your voice is echoing in an empty room lost in the dark. I've had those nights, friends, knees pressed into the carpet, tears staining my Bible, begging God for a whisper, a sign, anything to keep me standing. But let me give you the lifeline I've clung to through every storm. God's listening, and He's closer than you think. He's counting every tear that rolls down your cheek, hearing every prayer you whisper when the lights are off and the world's asleep. He knows your pain, how it grips your heart like a vise, how it weighs you down till you can hardly breathe, how it twists your stomach into knots when you're lying awake at 3 a.m. He's tracked every silent why you've screamed inside, every moment you felt crushed under the load. And He's right there beside you, even when you feel like you're sinking alone in the shadows, drowning in a sea of doubt. Jesus Himself said it, and I've preached it from every pulpit I've stood behind. Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. That's not just a pretty verse to hang on your wall, folks. That's a promise straight from the Son of God. A rope tossed to you when you're going under. Stay with me tonight. I've walked this road, I've preached this gospel, and I'm going to show you why waiting on God can feel like the hardest climb you'll ever make, and how His timing, His perfect, maddening, glorious timing, can turn your life upside down and set your feet on solid ground. This isn't cheap hope you buy off a shelf. This is the real thing, the kind that holds you steady when the earth shakes and the winds howl. Folks, I've traveled this country, preached to millions from New York to Los Angeles, and I'll tell you plain, life throws punches that'll knock the wind right out of you. One day you're sailing smooth, coffee's brewing in the pot, the sun's peeking through the blinds, you're humming a hymn and thinking you've got this living thing figured out. Then, wham, it hits you out of nowhere, like a freight train barreling through your front door. Maybe you're stuck in a job that's bleeding you dry. A dead-end gig where the clock ticks slower than molasses, where every day feels like a rerun of the last, and you're praying for a break, a promotion, a new start, anything to lift you out, and that door stays bolted shut. Or your body's turning traitor. Chronic back pain's got you popping pills like candy. Every step a wince or migraine slam you so hard you're begging God for just one day without that hammer pounding your skull. Maybe it's closer to home. Your spouse is a stranger across the dinner table, words scarce and sharp, and you're lying awake wondering if the love has slipped through your fingers like sand. Or your best friend's vanished, ghosted you after you poured out your soul over coffee. leaving you to pick up the shards alone. Being a Christian isn't a stroll in the park, friends. It's a battle, and the toughest fight is the waiting. You're on your knees night after night, pouring your heart out. Oh, God, help me fix this, move this mountain. And all you hear is silence, like the line's gone dead. You're begging for a job to keep the lights on, for that prodigal son or daughter to walk back through your door, for the doctor to hand you a clean bill of health. And it feels like your prayers are piling up in some heavenly inbox marked unread. I've said it in crusades across the world. God's delays are not denials, but opportunities to trust Him more. It's like waking up every morning, lacing up your faith like a pair of work boots, and stepping into the same muddy trench, trusting Him when your wallet's thin as paper, when the clock's ticking louder than a thunderstorm, when you're staring at a shut-off notice from the electric company or a test result that freezes your blood. I've lived it myself. Years back, I hit a wall where the path wasn't clear. I'd preached to thousands, seeing souls saved by the droves, but the next step was foggy. Funds dried up like a desert creek. Plans stalled doors I thought God would fling wide states shut. I'd kneel by my bed every night, the Lord show me the way, light the path. Weeks stretched into months, the mailbox brought nothing but bills, and I started wondering, have I missed your voice? Are you done with me? You've been there too, haven't you? Those moments where you're crying out to God, why is it taking so long? Are you even listening? Have you forgotten me? Maybe it's your marriage you've prayed until your voice is hoarse, but the silence between you and your spouse grows thicker. Or it's your health. Years of doctor visits, tests, no answers, and you're asking the Lord, how much longer? Or your kids, one's lost to the streets, drugs, or despair, and you're pleading for a miracle, but the phone doesn't ring. It's brutal, friends, feeling like you're shouting into a canyon, like your faith is dangling by a thread. I've seen it in the faces at my crusades. Men with calloused hands and weary eyes, women with tears streaking their cheeks, young folks wondering if God's turned away. But I'm here to tell you tonight, waiting isn't just a trial, it's sacred ground. It's where God is shaping you, hammering you into something strong, something eternal, even when you can't see the chisel in His hand. Let me give you something to hold on to tight, folk. God sees your pain and hears your cry. Every single one of them, from the first to the last. That sob you let out into your pillow when the kids are asleep and the house is still. He's marked it down in His book, written in ink that never fades. That scream you choked back in the car when the doctor walked out with a grim face, He's got it recorded, every tremble in your voice. That whisper, I can't go on. As you sat alone in the dark, hands shaking, heart heavy, He heard it clear as a bell ringing through the heavens. God's purpose isn't some flimsy wish scribbled on a napkin. It's rock solid, carved in granite, and His timing, perfect, even when it feels like He's missed the train. The Bible says it in Lamentations 3:25-26, and I've preached it from every stage. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in Him, to the one who seeks Him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. And if that wasn't enough, 1 John 3:20 piles on the promise. Even when our hearts condemn us, God is greater than our hearts and knows everything. So don't throw your hope out the window, friends. God's still on His throne, ruling over every storm, every shadow. He's Jehovah Nissi, your banner flying high when the battle's fiercest, waving proud in the wind. He's Jehovah Shalom, your peace when the thunder rolls and the rain beats down on your roof. He's Emmanuel, God with us, closer than the breath in your lungs, nearer than the heartbeat thumping in your chest. Maybe you're exhausted, dragging your feet through the mud, ready to toss in the towel. I've stood at that crossroads myself, staring down the barrel of doubt. But hear me, He's not finished with you. His plans don't flicker out like a candle in the wind. They blaze, they burst, they light up the night when the hour's right. Why does this matter? Because waiting on God isn't wasting time. It's trusting a God who's never dropped the ball, not once in all eternity. I think of a woman I met in Charlotte years ago, a single mom with 3 kids, cancer tearing through her like wildfire. She prayed, we prayed, revival shook the rafters, prayer chains stretched across counties, the whole church lifting a name to the throne. Months dragged on, chemo rounds piled up, hospital bills stacked higher than a kitchen table could hold, and we asked, Lord, where's the answer? Lord, why the delay? But she'd sit there frail but smiling and say, God's holding me. He's got a plan bigger than I can see. And He did. Remission came slow as dawn creeping over the hills, but sure as the sunrise, and her faith was a fortress when it hit. I've seen it in the coal mines of Kentucky. Men with black dust on their faces praying for work when the mines closed, holding on till a new job broke through. I've seen it in the cotton fields of Alabama. Mothers praying for sons lost to war, clinging to hope till a letter came home. That's the truth, folks. Waiting's not a curse. It's a classroom where God teaches you trust. He's not turning his back or shutting his ears. He's training you for something mighty, something eternal, something worth every tear you shed. Folks, here's a truth I've carried from every pulpit I've ever climbed. God's delays are not God's denials. I've told millions, preached it under the stars and in the rain. God's delays are not denials, they're opportunities to trust him more. Look at Lazarus in John 11. Mary and Martha send a desperate plea to Jesus. Our brother's dying, hurry, Lord. They're pacing the dirt floor, wringing their hands, glancing out the window for a dust cloud that says he's coming. They're praying, hoping, trusting he'll rush in with healing in his hands. But Jesus waits. Days tick by. Lazarus takes his last breath. They wrap him in cloths, lay him in a tomb, and the air grows heavy with the stench of death. When Jesus finally walks up, they're shattered. Lord, why didn't you come? He's gone. If you'd been here, he'd be alive. They're hurt, angry, tears streaming, hearts breaking, maybe even ready to turn away. But Jesus steps to that tomb, lifts his voice like thunder, and shouts, Lazarus, come out! And out he stumbles, alive, eyes blinking in the sunlight, grave clothes trailing behind him. That delay wasn't a no, friends. It was God Almighty setting the stage for a miracle that shook the earth. A wonder they couldn't have dreamed up in 100 years. We live in a fast world today. Everything's instant and we like it that way. Amazon drops your package before you finish clicking buy. DoorDash rolls up with a burger before you've hung up the phone. TikTok feeds you a new video every swipe. So when God says wait, we lose our minds. Why's my prayer unanswered? Did I sin too much? Is he punishing me? Is he punishing me? I felt that sting. I've walked that road myself. Years back, I was out of work, laid off with no warning. Just a handshake and a sorry, clean out your desk. I'd preached to crowds, seen God move mountains, but there I was sending out pleas. Lord, I need a job. I'm single. And then waiting, night after night, bills piled higher than my faith felt strong. Months crawled by like a weary mule. Savings shrank. The phone stayed silent, and I started doubting. Did I miss your call, Lord? Are you even picking up? Then out of the blue, a door swung open. Better pay, closer to home, closer to home. Right when I've been stretched enough to carry the load, God wasn't saying no. He was saying, hold on, son, I've got something better brewing. Isaiah 55, 8, 9 lays it out plain, and I've quoted it to thousands. My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither your ways my ways. My ways are higher than your ways. His timing isn't ours. Ours is a stopwatch, his is eternity. I met a young mother once in Dallas, prayed 3 years for a child, lost one after another, tears soaking her kitchen floor every night. She kept trusting, kept praying. Then twins came healthy, screaming, right when her heart had grown big enough to hold them. I've seen it in Chicago. A man prayed 5 years for his wife to beat cancer. Chemo after chemo, no change, but he held on, and healing came. Slow but sure, because God wasn't denying, he was designing. Delays aren't God turning his back, they're him tuning you up for the race, oiling the gears for a journey you can't see yet. I've preached it in tent revivals and city arenas. God's not late. He's laying the groundwork for glory. Patience isn't sitting idle, friends. It's faith with backbone, a steel rod running through your soul. James 5, 7, 8 says, be patient. Brothers and sisters, see how the farmer waits for the crop. I've preached it from every corner. God doesn't promise an easy life, but he promises strength for the hard days. Life's rough. Your car's in the shop again, leaking oil like a busted pipe, racking up a bill you can't pay. Your kid's flunking school, report cards a sea of red ink, and the teacher's calling every other day. Your boss is on your back, piling deadlines like bricks on a burrow. So you pray, oh Lord, fix this mess. But the answer doesn't come overnight, doesn't show up with a bow on it. That's not God forgetting you. That's Him building you, stretching you, forging you in the fire. My sister waited 6 months for surgery clearance, 6 months of scans, delays, paperwork snarled in red tape. She'd pace the kitchen till the linoleum wore thin, snap at us over breakfast, pray through gritted teeth till her knuckles turned white. But she clung to Romans 5:3-4 like a lifeline. Suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. That clearance came, slow as a glacier, but when it did, she walked out tougher. Faith forged like steel, like seen it in a man from Atlanta. Lost his job in 8 when the economy tanked, prayed every sunrise, took odd jobs hauling trash and mowing lawns to keep food on the table. Months passed, hope flickered. Then a door opened, better gig than he lost because he didn't quit on God. I met a widow in Memphis, husband gone, house falling apart, prayed for help while the roof leaked and the pipes groaned. She waited, trusted, the neighbors rallied, fixed it up because God was working while she held on. Waiting's not punishment, friends, it's preparation. A gym where God builds your spiritual muscle rep by rep till you're stronger than you ever dreamed. The longer the wait, the greater the blessing. That's a truth I've seen from Genesis to Judgment Day. Take Abraham and Sarah, Genesis 21. God promised a son, said, "You'll father nations." But Abraham's 100, so it was 90 decades of waiting and dusty tinks, no cribs rocking, no diapers drying, just sand and silence stretching out like a desert highway. They're old enough for rocking chairs, not rocking babies. But then Isaac arrives, perfect timing, wild blessing, a boy who sparks a lineage that echoes through history. God wasn't slow. He was loading the cannon, priming the pump for a miracle. Last summer, my mom fought the prayers rose like smoke. Tears fell like rain. Scans came back grim week after week. Chemo drained, her tumors held their ground, months dragged on like a lifetime, and I nearly gave up. Lord, is this it? Are we done? Then a new treatment clicked, shrunk the mass down right when we'd grown tough enough to carry the fight. Proverbs 3:5-6 has been my anchor, and I've shouted it from rooftops. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. He will make your paths straight. I've seen it in a boy from Nashville, prayed a year for college aid, rejections piled up like autumn leaves, doubt gnawed at his bones. Then it landed, full ride, dream school, because he hung on through the silence. I met a farmer in Kansas, drought burned his crops 3 summers running, prayed over cracked earth till his knees bled. Rain came late but lush because God's timing was brewing a harvest. God's delays are marinating the good stuff, friends, trust the slow cook. It's worth every minute you wait. Here's a secret I've learned, and you can start it tonight. Rest in His timing, and peace will flood your soul. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." Philippians 4:6-7 piles on the promise. Don't be anxious about anything. The peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts. I used to fret over every bump in the road, car trouble on the way to a crusade. Oh Lord, why now? No word back after praying for revival. Oh, what's the holdup? It had chew me up pacing the hotel room, preaching to myself in the mirror, checking the clock like it held the answer. Then I learned this: breathe deep, pray hard, trust Him, let it go. Last week, my flight got delayed. 4 hours stuck in a sweaty terminal, gate changes every 20 minutes, folks grumbling like a choir of discontent. Old me, I'd have stormed the desk, demanded answers, tweeted a sermon on patience. Knew me? I prayed, grabbed a coffee, found a corner to nap, landed fine, no worse for wear. A friend of mine waited for her son's college letter. Waitlisted, months of silence. She stayed calm, prayed steady, then accepted came because she didn't fight the wait. I've said it in every city I've preached. Peace comes when we stop fighting God's plan. I've seen it in a fisherman from Maine, nets empty, bills due. Prayed for a catch while the sea stayed still. He rested in God, then the fish swam in, boat heavy because he let peace rule. Drop the wrestling match, friends. Peace rolls in like a river, steady and deep when you rest in His rhythm. I've told the world, and I'll tell you tonight, God isn't just fixing your life. He's building an eternal purpose through it. Look at Joseph, Genesis 50:20. You meant harm, but God meant good. His brothers sell him like livestock. He's shackled in chains, slaving in Egypt, locked in a dungeon. Years of waiting, scraping by on crumbs, staring at stone walls. Then suddenly, he's running Egypt, feeding nations, saving lives from famine. God wasn't asleep. He was stacking the deck, turning a slave into a savior. Psalm 103:19 declares it, and I've preached it under every sky. The Lord has established his throne in heaven, and his kingdom rules over all. A friend waited 2 years for a home. Bank said no, deals crumbled. He prayed through the letdowns. Then yes, right when prices crashed, saved him a fortune because God was in charge. My uncle prayed a decade for his daughter. Addiction had her, relapses broke him, silence stretched long. Then one morning she showed up clean, arms around his neck because God was bossing the plane. Romans 8:28 seals it. I shouted it from every stage. We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. I've seen it in a steelworker from Pittsburgh, plant closed, prayed for work, took side hustles to survive. Job came better pay, steady hours, because God's dominion held firm. His plan's not shaky, friends. It's still unshakable, eternal. Trust it. Lean into it. He's got the whole game on lock. Doubt's a sly devil whispering in your ear. Move now, God's too slow. Sarah laughed at God's promise, a kid. Me? Then she rushed in with Hagar, sparking a feud still burning to this day. Messy, painful, human. Joseph, he could have cursed his chains, raged at the heavens. Why me, Lord? But instead, he waited, worked, trusted. And what did God do? He turned a prisoner into a prince, a dungeon into a dynasty. To contrast that with us, we quit when the answer's late, when the mail's delayed, when prayers don't ping back instant as a text. We grab the wheel, I'll fix it, and crash with patched up plans that unravel fast. But God, he's weaving gold while we're staring at gray thread. He's threading a tapestry we won't see until it's finished. His delays aren't dead ends, they're detours to glory, paths we never chart alone. Picture it, friends, your breakthrough's not late, it's loading, buffering, building steam like a train gathering speed. That job you're praying for, that's coming better than the last flop, richer than you hoped. That healing you're begging for, it's brewing stronger than you'd guess, deeper than medicine can reach. That child lost to the world, God's plotting a U-turn. A homecoming you'll weep over. Waiting isn't a prison, it's a launch pad. It's a launch pad. A runway for his power. Hang on tight, he's not patching potholes, he's paving highways to eternity. Here's where we land tonight, friends. I sees your pain. He hears your cry. Every tear streaking your face. Every why clawing at your throat. Every groan you've buried deep. He's not blind. Not deaf. Not checked out. He's watching. He's listening. He's working. So hold on tight. The dawn's creeping up over the ridge. Your victory's simmering, ready to boil over into something glorious. You are not alone. I've preached it. I've lived it. And I know it's true. My grandma used to say, God's never late. He just loves a grand entrance. She waited 15 years for my grandpa, prayed every night over a whiskey-soaked man, tears staining her Bible pages. Then one Christmas morning, he walked in sober, grand entrance, God's timing, tears of joy all around. Now it's your turn. Drop this in the comments. Speech balloon, God is always with me. Let's stand together, build a wall of faith that won't crack. Your pain won't last forever. Your cries aren't bouncing off some cold ceiling. They're landing in hands that hung the stars, ears that hear the sparrow fall.